The diner was nearly empty when the storm outside hit its peak, rain hammering the windows like it was trying to break in. Inside, under the flickering neon "Open 24 Hours" sign, a woman in a faded blue uniform wiped down table 7 for the third time, even though it was already spotless. Her name was Maria, single mother, 32. 2 kids waiting at home with a babysitter she couldn't really afford but pretended she could. And tonight, like every night, she told herself she just needed to get through one more shift. The bell above the diner door suddenly rang. A man walked in. He didn't look like the kind of man who belonged in a place like this. Tailored black coat, polished shoes, a watch that reflected the dim light like it had its own power source. Everything about him screamed money, old money, quiet money, dangerous money. The kind of man who didn't look at people when he spoke, only through them. He sat at table 9 without waiting to be guided. Maria noticed how the other customers went quiet, like the air itself had shifted. She walked over, forcing a polite smile. "Good evening, sir. What can I get you?" He didn't look up from the menu. "Coffee, black, and whatever is fastest." His voice was calm, controlled, detached, like emotions were something he had long stopped using. Maria nodded and turned away. She had seen men like him before. Rich ones, tired ones, ones who tipped well and ones who didn't tip at all. But something about him felt different. Not cruel, just empty. She brought his coffee quickly. He didn't thank her, just slid a tablet out of his briefcase and began working, as if the world around him was irrelevant. The diner went on with its usual rhythm. Clinking plates, low conversations, the hum of exhaustion shared by everyone working late shifts. Maria refilled his coffee twice. Each time, he said nothing. When he finally finished eating, barely touching the food she brought, he stood up, adjusted his coat, and walked to the counter. Maria picked up the check. 0 tip, not even a cent. She stared at it for a moment longer than she should have. It wasn't about the money. It was about the pattern, the rent due in 5 days, the school trip form sitting in her purse, the electricity bill she had been postponing opening. She sighed quietly, folded the receipt, and forced herself not to feel anything. People like him didn't notice people like her. That was just how the world worked, or so she thought. The next morning, Maria came early for her shift. The storm had passed, leaving the streets washed and strangely peaceful. Sunlight reflected off puddles like broken glass. The diner was still quiet when she unlocked the door. She went through routine, turning on the coffee machine, stacking menus, wiping counters, until she reached table 9. There was something under the plate, a folded piece of paper. She frowned, glanced around, then picked it up. At first she thought it was a complaint, or worse, some kind of insult. But when she opened it, her breath caught. It wasn't a note, it was a check, a real one. Her hands trembled slightly as she read the amount. She blinked once, then again. It was enough to cover her rent for an entire year, enough to fix her broken car, enough to stop counting pennies every single day. Her heart started pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears, and beneath the check there was something else. A second note, short, precise, no signature, just a sentence. Kindness should never have to wait for better days. Maria sat down in the empty diner booth, gripping the edge of the table as if the world might tilt. Her first instinct wasn't joy, it was disbelief, then fear, then confusion. Why her? Why a waitress in a forgotten diner on a stormy night? She replayed every moment from last night, every interaction, every silence. The man had left without tipping, without acknowledging her, and yet he had left this. Something didn't add up. By mid-morning she couldn't focus. Her manager noticed, but she didn't explain. She tucked the check into her bag like it might disappear if she looked at it too long. That night she took it home. Her apartment was small, 2 rooms, one broken heater that made winter nights unbearable. Her children were asleep when she sat at the kitchen table staring at the check under a flickering bulb. Her daughter had left a drawing on the fridge earlier, a stick figure family holding hands under a sun that looked too big for the page. Maria touched the drawing softly. Then she cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like someone who had been strong for too long and didn't know how to stop anymore. The next day she went back to the diner. She kept expecting him to return. He didn't. Days passed. Then a week. Nothing. She tried asking coworkers if they had seen him before. No one had. It was as if he had stepped out of a storm, changed her life, and vanished back into it. But something about the note stayed with her. Kindness should never have to wait for better days. She couldn't stop thinking about it. so she started small. A free coffee for a tired truck driver who couldn't afford breakfast, a sandwich slipped into a homeless man's bag without telling him, a toy bought for a child in the diner who kept staring at the claw machine. At first she felt guilty, then nervous, then lighter, as if something inside her had been unlocked. One evening, a week later, a familiar black car stopped outside the diner. Maria froze. The same man stepped out. This time, he didn't look like money. He looked like exhaustion wearing expensive clothes. He walked in and sat at the same table. Maria approached slowly. Her voice was quieter than before. I think I need to understand something. He looked up at her for the first time, really looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. Recognition, not of her face, but of something deeper. I wondered when you'd ask, he said. Maria's throat tightened. Why me? Why that amount? Why that note? He leaned back slightly, as if the weight of the answer was heavier than he expected. Because I used to sit where you sit. Silence. That diner table wasn't random, he continued. 20 years ago I was you. Different uniform. Same exhaustion. Same empty tips. Same nights wondering how to survive the next week. Maria didn't move. I built everything I have now from nothing, he said. And when I finally had enough money to forget where I came from, I realized that was the most dangerous thing I could do. He looked down at his hands. So I don't tip anymore. He said softly, if I tipped like a billionaire everywhere I went, it would feel like charity. Distance, separation. I don't want to be above people. He paused. I want to be beneath them, reminding myself what it feels like to need something you can't ask for. Maria's eyes softened, confusion fading into something heavier. Understanding? He continued. That check wasn't payment. It was responsibility. You didn't just serve me coffee. You treated me like I still mattered when I had nothing left in me. That's rarer than money. Maria sat down across from him slowly. For the first time, she didn't see a billionaire. She saw someone who had once been invisible too. Her voice cracked slightly. I don't know what to do with something like that. He gave a faint, tired smile. Then don't spend it on survival, he said. Spend it on freedom, and when you can, pass it on. Months later, the diner changed. Not dramatically, not overnight, but quietly. Maria reduced her shifts, went back to school part-time, fixed her apartment, and started something small, a community breakfast every Sunday morning for anyone who needed a meal without explanation. No questions asked, no judgment, just food and dignity. Sometimes she wondered if the man had been real at all, but every time she saw someone hesitate at the door, then walk in anyway, she remembered his words. Kindness should never have to wait for better days. And she understood something simple, something life-changing. Sometimes the most powerful people in the world aren't the ones who show off their wealth. They are the ones who remember what it felt like to have none, and choose not to forget others who still do.